His real name was Robert Stackowitz, but everyone in Sherman, Connecticut knew him as Robert Gordon. Quiet, pleasant, unassuming, single with a longtime girlfriend. He owned a small boat repair business. There is a lake near Sherman noted for its good fishing, and his boat business stayed busy, if not altogether that profitable. 3 days a week he would call the IGA store in Sherman and order his lunch, a meatball slider, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm not sure that the diagnosis came that long ago, but Mr. Sherman who died this past Monday of advanced bladder cancer. I never met him. I think our paths crossed in Carrollton, Georgia, of all places. You see, Robert Stackowitz was arrested in Carrollton on a charge of home invasion with a weapon. He was tried in the local court. My senior warden was the judge. His sentence was 10 years in prison. He was sent to a prison labor camp. He was not considered a flight risk. He was an excellent repairman, so he was assigned to work at other prison camps in the county. Carroll County has a lot of prison camps. He even had a car to use. He would go out in the mornings to work and every afternoon would drive himself back to his confinement. Until one day in 1968, he drove to the Atlanta airport, bought a ticket, flew to Connecticut, his home state, caught the first bus out of the terminal wherever it was going, and got off at the end of the route in Sherman, Connecticut. He found a place to live. He started his own business, was a pillar of the community, a friendly guy whom everybody liked. The problem came a year or so ago when the authorities in Carroll County discovered Mr. Sherman, or Mr. Stackowitz. They discovered where he was. His case was brought forward, a letter of extradition was sent to Connecticut, and he was to be returned to Georgia to serve the balance of his sentence plus additional time. Fortunately, the people in Connecticut have some compassion. They refused to grant the extradition because of his advanced stage of cancer. He died Monday. An outstanding warrant for his arrest is on the books in Carroll County. A good man, a good citizen for all intents and purposes, at least the way we measure things these days. Our lesson from the Hebrew Scriptures this morning is about another fugitive from justice. Moses was born of Jewish parentage because of Pharaoh's orders to kill all male Jewish babies. His mother put him in a basket, put him in a river, saw to it that he was ultimately adopted by the royal family in Egypt, raised as one of their own. As a young man, he encountered one of the Egyptian overseers beating on a Jewish slave, and he interceded, accidentally killing the overseer. He fled the country. He ended up in a place known as Midian, met a young woman, married her. Her father was a local religious leader. Started a new life, fathered children, grew a herd of sheep, became a rural shepherd. A new life created for himself, not so very different from Robert Stackowitz. All was fine until one day, while he was tending his sheep, he saw something that he thought was extraordinary, a bush that appeared to be on fire but was not consumed. His curiosity led him to the bush. That lesson we read first this morning is the story of what took place, of the voice calling him by name. Moses says, "Who are you? I don't know you." The answer is, "I am the God of your fathers, of your forefathers." That's all you need to know. What do I call you? What is your name? I am who I am. I will be who I will be. What difference does it make as long as we're in conversation? You can begin by taking off your shoes, taking off your sandals, because you're on sacred ground. And then the conversation begins. I want you to go back to the land that you have fled from. I want you to confront Pharaoh, the leader of that land. I want you to expose him for who he is and what he is and the atrocities he has created. And I want you to demand the release of your people, and I will then lead them to a new land, a land of milk and honey. And like Robert Stackowitz, Moses said, "No way. I'm not going back." And then the conversation increases. "You know what I want you to do," says the God of his forefathers. And look at the excuses that Moses has. We all have used them. Who am I? I am a nobody. You're the one I have chosen. Why should he listen to me? Pharaoh, that is. And the voice says, "That staff you have in your hand, throw it on the ground in front of Pharaoh and it will become a snake." That ought to get his attention. Moses says, "I don't speak well. I won't know what to say. I stumble over my words." He says, "I'll send your brother with you." He claims he's eloquent. It's a wonderful conversation that goes back. Every excuse that Moses has, I have used at some time or another in some situation. The conversation continues. And finally, it comes down to, I have told you what I want you to do, go. And Moses goes. I love the story. When I looked at the scriptures for today, I thought, oh yeah. That story ought to be read at every high school graduation, every college graduation. It ought to be read at every wedding, and it ought to be read at every ordination. Point of it is, what is it that you are being and I are being called to do in the midst of everyday life? What are we being called to do? Who are we being called to speak to? Who are the Pharaohs and others that we are being sent to? What are we to say? Words of truth, words of comfort, words of support. Who is it that needs to hear us speaking those words? Who needs to hear those two words, I care? Somewhere, someplace, someone in your life and in my life is waiting to hear those words. I'm afraid that many of us have been misled about this faith business. There are all those stories about the religious journeys, people going to shrines and holy places, pilgrimages to the Holy Land, all seeking a religious experience. I read the story of a family who has a very ill, chronically ill daughter. Every year for the last 6 years, they have traveled to the shrine at Lourdes in France, where their daughter bathes in those waters and they pray for a cure. They were interviewed by a reporter who asked them very bluntly, why do you keep going back? It's not working. The mother replied, oh yes it is. It's not about the cure, it's about the journey. The journey that we as a family make together. In the gospel for this morning, Jesus tells the disciples that they are to journey to Jerusalem with him, and that there will be a confrontation with the religious authorities and the political authorities. It will not be pleasant. There will be no welcoming reception. There will be anger and violence, and ultimately there will be death. But the next sentence is, but there will be new life. There will be resurrection. Peter takes Jesus aside and says, no way. No way. And Jesus says to him the harshest thing he says to anyone in all of Scripture. He calls him a Satan. Get behind me, you Satan. This is Rocky. You know, last week we heard his story, his promised support, the fact that he would be the foundation of the church to come. Didn't last long, did it? we mimic that in many ways. It takes Peter a long time to get it, but eventually he will. He has to learn what the mother of that child who travels to Lourdes every year knows. It's all about the journey. It's all about the journey. Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, tells Moses to go. Go back to Egypt, go back to your people, go back to Pharaoh, go on the journey. And Jesus says to his disciples, let us set our face toward Jerusalem. And his words to Peter, that rock, that one he has just called Satan, follow me. Follow me. You see, it's not about the destination. It's all about the journey, the one that we're on. This journey that we call life. And it's about the one who says, I will journey with you.